Does he have any legal defense? Yes, he has endless amounts of legal defense. Are you kidding me? Yes. As it stands, this is a violation of numerous pre-existing American laws. You cannot simply engage in the process of revoking someone's green card. Important to recognize that. Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, the left-wing Palestinian resistance group, is calling on progressive forces, human rights organizations, and to take urgent action to expose the crackdown on Palestinian rights advocates on U.S. college campuses. The recent actions reveal the true fascist face of the Trump administration, the group said in a statement. They called Trump's push to detain and deport student activists a systematic oppression campaign and said this repressive behavior will not scare free people, nor will it stop courageous voices from continuing to support the Palestinian cause. And yes, the only thing, and I'm going to get to that story now, about Mahmoud Khalil, a student activist who led the Columbia protests, who is now in ICE custody. Okay? This is a horrifying story, an absolutely morally repugnant, horrifying story. And the reaction from Americans has also been just as horrifying. Okay? It is insane. Now, of course, Donald Trump signaled that he would do this. So it's not surprising, if that makes sense. It's still, that doesn't change the reality that it is a completely morally repugnant act. It betrays the American Constitution. It betrays free speech. It is genuinely messed up. I don't know how else to describe it beyond the fact that I have no words for it. I have no words to describe this moral depravity. What ended up happening is ICE arrested a student activist. They realized that he was not on a visa in the process of arresting him, as the Trump administration had signaled that if you are a student activist that has protested against Israel, we will deport you. We will remove your visa. This is something that they said they were going to do. They realized that he didn't actually have a student visa. He actually had a green card. He was married to an American citizen who was 8 months pregnant with his child. And they took him anyway. Colombia, in the process, actually cooperated with ICE, for the record, which is also, again, betraying the students, betraying the student body, betraying the principle of being a place for learning, a place for education, like actively collaborating with the Gestapo against your own students is shocking. It's unimaginable. So ICE did what ICE does. They took him anyway. They grabbed him. He is now in a Louisiana facility as we speak. And they said that they were revoking his green card. People have not been able to communicate with him since yesterday. And the Secretary of State then announced that green card holders will also have their green cards revoked. This is what Marco Rubio said. Marco Rubio, who got 99 votes in a Senate confirmation hearing from the likes of Bernard Sanders as well. We will be revoking the visas and or green cards of Hamas supporters in America so they can be deported. Mahmoud Khalil's crime was having moral courage. That's it. He saw what Israel was doing and he thought it was unconscionable. Mahmoud Khalil has now been moved to an ICE facility in Jena, Louisiana. DSA here in Louisiana has been working since this morning to get him aid and get him in contact with everyone he needs to hear from. Not sure if he or his team have a call to action for supporting him during this time or not. Asking my chapter currently, and I'll let you know as soon as I hear from anything. Yes, I already mentioned this, but yes, his wife is an American citizen and is 8 months pregnant. And for hours, they didn't tell her where he was. And yes, Shai Davide also demanded that this person get deported. Let's take a look at the story, and I'll get to it a little bit. I'll talk more about it. But there's also currently a protest happening in New York as well.
These will return. And up.
But we'll get to that in a little bit. Let's talk about some of the other details.
Who helped lead last year's protests at Columbia University. Mahmoud Khalil's attorney says the agents said the former graduate student's green card was being revoked. Christina Fan joins us live from Columbia's Morningside Heights campus with the latest. Christina.
Natalie, good morning. Mahmoud Khalil was a well-known figure here on campus, known for organizing and leading the student encampment that was pro-Palestinian here on campus last spring. His attorney has vowed to file a vigorous legal appeal, accusing the government of openly repressing student activism. We know that federal immigration authorities arrested Khalil Saturday night, and according to his attorney, Amy Greer, he was taken into custody inside his university-owned apartment. Wife. Greer says federal agents claim they were fulfilling a State Department order to revoke his student visa, and when she told them he was a legal permanent resident with a green card, they said they were revoking that instead. A spokesperson with the Department of Homeland Security released a statement saying the arrest was in support of President Trump's executive orders prohibiting anti-Semitism, claiming Khalil led activities aligned.
Does he have any legal defense? Yes, he has endless amounts of legal defense. Are you kidding me? Yes. As it stands, this is a violation of numerous pre-existing American laws. You cannot simply engage in the process of revoking someone's green card for not violating any serious, severe crimes. When someone has a green card and they actually engage in some kind of serious crime, even then, the process of denaturalization and deportation would be unique, okay? He has not done anything. He has not violated the law as it stands, unless there is a clear-cut law where you just say, hey, if you hurt Israel's feelings, we will deport you. Until that becomes the law, there is no law that he has violated. So he has a chance to stay? Yes, he does. He does have a chance to stay. Obviously, I have no real confidence in the American criminal justice system, but this is, this is a novel example for sure. It's not one that I can think of from American history. Like there's not really any comparisons I can think of.
To Hamas, a designated organization. According to an immigration expert not related to this case, Khalil's arrest violates due process.
If he's a green card holder, slam dunk, there's no way to arrest him. If he had not been charged with a crime, or if he's, if there's something more than that, really, there's no way, number one. Because you're dealing with a legal resident alien, which means you're dealing with a green card holder who has a lot of rights in our country.
Yeah, you are basically de facto an American citizen at that point, okay? That's insane. This is one step removed from denaturalization, like having a natural-born U.S. citizen, someone who was born on U.S. soil, someone like myself, for example, having his citizenship removed simply because the president said so, or simply because the State Department says so. It's just like it is a violation of numerous American laws, okay? And here is the legal standing, or here is like the legal reasoning or justification that the American government used here. The arrest of Mahmoud Khalil, a prominent Palestinian activist, was based on a provision of immigration law that gives the administration broad authority on who can be subject to deportation, I'm told. The Immigration and Nationality Act states that an alien whose presence or activities in the United States the Secretary of State has reasonable ground to believe would have potentially serious adverse foreign policy consequences for the United States is deportable. That provision of the law was used, in this case, as grounds to detain Khalil, according to a senior Department of Homeland Security official. It's also expected to be used in future cases. The real reason why they're doing this is to create a chilling effect, okay? This violates the principle of the First Amendment. That is the only reason why they're doing this. They don't actually believe that this person is a terrifying figure or anything like that. They just don't want people on student visas or American citizens or green card holders to protest against the state of Israel. That's it. That's it. So when people come in here and ask me, Hassan, are you afraid? Like, is this going to happen to someone like yourself? We're not at that level. We're not at the level where they denaturalize U.S.-born citizens, even though the Trump administration has actively talked about, doing exactly that at one point. We're not there yet. But having said that, this doesn't put fear in my heart. It just puts anger in my heart. And I hope that you guys can also feel the way that I'm feeling in this moment. This shouldn't cause you to be. There are a lot more of us than there are of them. Okay? There are a lot more of us who understand exactly what is going on in Gaza and are angry about it, are willing to protest, than there are people who don't feel that way, people who want to silence you. It's that simple. Okay? There is nothing that they can do in the face of genuine moral conviction. It's completely unacceptable. And I suspect that people will push back. I will do everything in my power to do so as well. Okay? Jeremy Scahill had a take on this. He said, it's remarkable how so many people who just got their law degrees on Twitter don't understand a basic constitutional principle. A person is not convicted of a crime because someone, including the president, accuses them of a crime. This applies to U.S. citizens and non-citizens alike. They are simply trying to do their very best to get you to stop protesting. They openly has said it as such as well. The ADL, which is supposed to be a civil rights organization, by the way, I tweeted about this yesterday. The ADL, that is supposed to be a civil rights organization in the United States, was celebrating this. Okay? They were celebrating this decision. The Apartheid Defense League was celebrating the decision of the White House and the Department of Homeland Security, the decision to revoke the green card of an American green card holder married to an American citizen who was 8 months pregnant for the crime of hurting Israel's feelings. The ADL thinks it's okay to revoke the green card of student activists. This is supposed to be a civil rights organization, by the way, is what I tweeted. Here's what the ADL said. We firmly believe that there would be swift and severe consequences for those who provide material support to foreign terrorist organizations, incite violence in support of terrorist activities, or conceal their identities in order to harass and intimidate Jewish individuals and institutions with impunity. We appreciate the Trump administration's broad, bold set of efforts to counter campus anti-Semitism, and this action further illustrates that resolve by holding alleged perpetrators responsible for their actions. Obviously, any deportation or action or revocation of a green card holder or visa must be undertaken in alignment with required due process protections. We also hope that this action serves as a deterrent to others who might consider breaking the law on college campuses or anywhere. When they're not defending Elon Musk throwing up a Sig Heil, they're defending the Nazi government doing Nazi things. Here's the Columbia Jewish Alumni Association, which played a role in this happening, by the way, celebrating the decision of the Department of Homeland Security. Now that Mahmoud Khalil has been taken into ICE custody, his supporters are spinning a sob story about why you should feel sorry for him. Here's why you shouldn't, and why this is exactly what needs to happen to restore order to campuses like Columbia and our country. Khalil wasn't just another protester. He was a ringleader of the chaos in Columbia. Here he is acting as a spokesperson for the Hamilton Hall takeover, a ringleader at Milstein Hall occupation, distributed materials supporting terrorism. For over a year, Columbia coddled Khalil. They excused him. They negotiated with him. They suspended, then unsuspended him. He responded by escalating with more and more demands. Demands in capital letters. What were those demands? Demands that the Columbia University divest from Israel. Very reasonable demands, mind you. Very reasonable. And also that the Columbia University authorities actually demonstrate transparency over the ways in which they are suspending student activists. Okay? None of this is illegal, by the way. None of this. Civil disobedience is perfectly permissible, perfectly acceptable. It's the only tool that people have until you push them into a corner and they don't want to be civil any longer. This is something that a lot of Americans don't understand, because while there have been instances of militancy throughout U.S. history, and some of that militancy has led to the weekend, for example, and labor rights and labor protections that we actually take for granted without even thinking about it. Okay, the abolition of child labor, things of that nature that the current American administration is actively clawing back, by the way, and actively undermining on a daily basis. But as I've said time and time again, I always bring back the JFK quote on this issue. Those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable. Okay, that's it. That's what you're doing. You cannot consistently push people and expect them not to retaliate in return. That's it. It can't go on like this. It just simply cannot go on like this. There will be blowback to this, I'm telling you. No one forced Khalil to barge into campus, disrupt learning, or take over buildings. No one forced him to lead mobs that demonize America or harass and intimidate Jews. This was his choice. Reportedly, Khalil's green card is being revoked. Good. A green card is a privilege that millions wait years for. So is studying at Columbia. Khalil threw them away. His actions prove he neither respects nor deserves the shot he was given. No one should feel sorry for him. Khalil's supporters report that he recently graduated. If so, how and why was he on a closed Barnard College campus? He knew full well he didn't belong there, and he snuck onto campus for the express purpose of interrupting the learning of others. Khalil has spent over a year abusing the privileges of this country and Columbia gave him. He faced zero consequences until now. If he's finally being removed as an anti-Semitic instigator and anti-Western provocateur, this isn't a strategy. This isn't a tragedy. This is justice. That is what the Columbia Jewish Alumni Association said. ADL, of course, the Apartheid Defense League, obviously, supported this. I can't explain to you how unimaginable how insanely cruel this is. I don't know how else to describe to you how cruel this is, how ridiculous this is. And although in this process, those who use their Judaism as a defense mechanism, as a shield, to claim that this is anti-Semitic because he's criticizing the state of Israel, okay, what those people do not comprehend is that these rules will inevitably be used against Jews. First, anti-Zionist Jews, and then all Jews across the board. And you're a fucking dumbass for not realizing that. And the only reason why I'm bringing this up is not because like, oh, Jews are exceptional and they must be preserved or they must be protected or anything like that. I'm not doing Jewish exceptionalism or whatever the fuck people say I'm doing. I'm simply saying that if you care about self-preservation and you actively champion these things, you are actively championing your own inevitable demise. You are a fucking short-sighted moron. Do you understand? Wake the fuck up. It is quite literally baked in to Holocaust studies. Understanding the idea that it doesn't start with just trade unionists or socialists, okay? Ridiculous. Update from Zateo on Mahmoud. Scoop. Emails obtained by Zateo News shows Mahmoud Khalid reached out for help from Columbia administration one day before ICE detained him. He said he couldn't sleep from threats he was receiving. He even wrote he feared ICE might come to his home. And they did. And they did. And now people are saying he's a terrorist. Here's Izzy Breen. Organizations of Jews cheering, clapping as armed agents of the state remove a young person from public life without telling the public or even a family where he is, without even an ounce of self-awareness. Okay? The White House then said, Shalom, Mahmoud. We will find, apprehend, and deport these terrorist sympathizers from our country, never to return again. Using the Trump quote. The White House has been actively also partnering without... I don't know how this doesn't even like spell trouble for anyone who cares about self-preservation as an American Jew, okay? Like liberal Zionists or conservative Zionist Jews don't fucking recognize how devastating this is for their own fucking future on this soil, by the way. Yeah. Izzy said, huge test for Democrats. What's more important, Israel or democracy? It's pretty obvious that they don't care about democracy. They care about Israel. Let's be real. The other Shalom tweet was even grosser than the previous one that we just looked at. Okay. Where is it? Let me see if I can find it real quick. Because the White House also posted yet another Shalom tweet, I think. This is going to create actual anti-Semitism? Of course it is. What do you mean? And it has already. Israel's actions being paired up with Judaism and the Western defenders of Israel claiming that this is being done at the behest of Judaism is already fucking exploding anti-Semitism. The next generation is already locked in. They're saying like, oh, well, you know, if they're doing this right now, then what was Hitler right about? That is like the most common thing that young people say, okay? That is literally going on right now. And the retaliation to that is not to be reasonable and immediately separate the actions of a violent genocidal apartheid state from the entire religion. Instead of doing that, people are offensively celebrating this shit. I don't know how no one can see the devastating impact of doing shit like this. Shalom, saying, "Shalom, Mahmoud." ICE proudly apprehended and detained Mahmoud Khalil, a radical foreign pro-Hamas student on the campus of Columbia University. This is the first arrest of many to come. Donald Trump then turned around and said, "Following my previously signed executive orders, ICE proudly apprehended and detained Mahmoud Khalil, a radical foreign pro-Hamas student on the campus of Columbia University. This is the first arrest of many to come. We know there are more students at Columbia and other universities across the country who have engaged in pro-terrorist, anti-Semitic, anti-American activity, and the Trump administration will not tolerate it. Many are not students. They are paid agitators. We will find, apprehend, and deport these terrorist sympathizers from our country, never to return again. If you support terrorism, including the slaughtering of innocent men, women, and children, your presence is contrary to our national and foreign policy interests, and you are not welcome here. We expect every one of America's colleges and universities to comply. Thank you." Yes, we have crossed the Rubicon when it comes to the insane ways in which this administration is just undermining the Constitution, weaponizing the Department of Homeland Security against people that they consider to be political dissidents. Okay, this has nothing to do with like protecting Hamas or offering materials and suck my dick. Okay, shut the fuck up. There have been numerous instances throughout American history where American politicians have actively offered real material support to institutions and organizations that were otherwise declared terrorist organizations. Okay? The most obvious and prescient example right now is Israel. That's number one. Number two, even one that was considered a terror cell by other Western nations, is the IRA. Americans fundraised and sent arms shipments directly to the IRA. What are we talking about? I'm not even talking about the Iran-Contra affair. I'm not talking about the American State Department actively offering material support and training and radicalization and logistics to virtually every single terror cell on this fucking planet, either directly or indirectly by way of local allies such as local regional powers such as Turkey, okay, or other NATO nations. That's not what I'm even talking about here. I'm saying like directly American citizens offering material support to groups that were considered terrorist groups has happened throughout American history. There's never been this level of reaction towards it. That is not even what Mahmoud Khalil did, by the way, which makes this even worse. Between 1973 and 1978, 500,000 rounds of 5.56 45 millimeter NATO ammunition stolen from U.S. Marine base were successfully sent to the IRA. 1979, the Gardaí seized a cargo of more than 150 guns and 60,000 rounds of ammunition, including 2 M60 machine guns, 15 M16 rifles, a number of M14 rifles, and an AK-47 sent from the United States. Irish Americans offered direct material support to the IRA, and they had every right to do so, by the way. They were on the right side, okay? This person did not do that for Hamas. He didn't do any of those things. He simply protested against the state of Israel. That's it. That is insane. And he wasn't the only person, by the way, okay? ICE agents also visited a second Palestinian student living in Columbia-owned housing over the weekend and attempted to take her into custody, but were turned away at the door, according to a union representing the student. That's right. I had the UAW representative H. Bizzle in the chat ringing the alarm bells about this as well. Do not open the door to ICE agents ever. Trump warns that arrest of Palestinian activists at Columbia will be the first of many, and it turns out they were also actively targeting another student there as well. It's just like an insane thing. I don't know. I don't know how people don't recognize how this will be damaging for them as well. Grants directly at Columbia, by the way. The NIH is today terminating more than $250 million in funding, including more than 400 grants to Columbia University, following the directives from the Trump administration's Joint Task Force to Combat Anti-Semitism. The cancellations are due to Columbia University's continued inaction in the face of persistent harassment of Jewish students. Here's what they did. They created a fake problem. Liberal media elevated this fake problem because of their own personal loyalty to the State Department agenda under the Brandon administration. And now the Trump administration comes in and says, you see, we're dealing with the anti-Semitism on college campuses. It's not real anti-Semitism on college campuses, okay? And even if there was anti-Semitism on college campuses, whether it be fucking Nazis protesting or anything else, this is not an adequate measure to deal with that, okay? Cutting off grant funding to college campuses and deporting people is an insane thing to do, especially when considering that when neo-Nazis that participated in Charlottesville were allowed to literally graduate from Columbia University in the past. One of the organizers of the Charlottesville neo-Nazi rally, where people were marching in the fucking streets with tiki torches saying Jews will not replace us, actually anti-Semitic shit, not simply saying Israel's an apartheid state, okay? Or that Zionism is fascist and we must not allow Zionism to fester. Those are not comparable statements. One is correct, the other one is Nazi bullshit. And Columbia treated one very differently than the other. Okay? This is white supremacy in full display. Leah Greenberg says, if you as an American Jew do not want to be used as the excuse for destruction of civil liberties and basic democratic protections, the time to speak out is right now. 100%. 100%. Straight up. And it's not just Jewish Americans. It's all Americans that have to speak out against this. This is, I don't, like, if you look at the situation and think, he's a terrorist, fuck him, okay? You are a delusional loser. If you look to the situation and say, he's just a terrorist, who cares? You do not understand what you are championing. You're not naive, you're evil. This reminds me of the more humorous quote from before the election regarding support for Hamas that you read before. What is this? Felix's position was, and I'm going to read this, okay? In terms of like lending support to Hezbollah or whatever, Felix also said, hold on, let me see if I can find it real quick. He said, I hate that the central conceit here is that any American can meaningfully support Ansar Allah, Hezbollah, or really anyone like that. An American supporting or condemning any of these groups, they literally can provide no material, logistical, or any other type of tangible assistance to, makes as much sense as an American condemning the Battle of Agincourt. It's like, that's it. Like, we're just chirping into the fucking void. The American government is Sharia law better or fascism? What? Sharia law? Where is Sharia law? What are you talking about, dude? It's doing whatever the fuck it wants regardless. That much is clear. Yeah. It's just, it's a ridiculous statement. And not only is it a ridiculous statement because it's like virtually impossible without any sort of like criminal punishment that you receive, including fucking torture and being put in Guantanamo Bay immediately. Okay. There is no real material support that you can offer these groups regardless. But outside of that, what they are considering material support is simply saying Israel is an apartheid state, that Israel's doing a genocide, and demanding that our institutions take actions against that. That is insane to me. Okay? And you know from my own personal back and forth online, wherever I go, the comments are fucking filled to the brim with Hassan loves terrorism. Hassan wants Jewish women to be raped or whatever the fuck these rabid psychos say. Regardless of what my commentary on this issue is, a lot of these people just simply say, oh, you support Palestinian emancipation? You're a terrorist. You love terrorism. You want Jews to die. Okay? This is an incredibly dangerous prospect. I'm not saying this simply out of self-preservation. Okay? This is completely unacceptable. It is officially Turkish levels of political suppression, okay? Suppressing dissent to this degree is insane. This is unironically something that has happened throughout American history in the past, in dark pages of American history, in terms of like the McCarthyist trials, the Red Scare, and the blacklisting that took place, the internment camps for the Japanese during World War II, things of that nature. We've done a lot of horrible things, okay? But god damn, this is like, maybe this happened. Maybe this happened in the, anti-Vietnamese occupation protests as well. Students engaged in a lot more militant action back then. But I don't know if they ever actually deported student protesters in the process. Like, I don't know if they actually utilized this level of political suppression If you think this is acceptable, you wouldn't have been resisting the Nazis in 1940. You would have been helping them. Oh, 100%. Yeah, I mean, they did Kent State. Obviously, they shot them. There was that. They did do that. Asmongold reacts to the Chinese UCLA student getting visa revoked for organizing rallies in support of Palestinians. What? This isn't even real. This wasn't a Chinese national who organized protests at UCLA and she didn't get her visa revoked. This was a fake story. She's not even Chinese, I don't think. Like, every part of this is fucking fake, dude. What the hell is going on?
And so, really, if you have a person who's organizing a group of people to collectively commit a crime, well, then, yeah, I think it makes sense to get them the fuck out of here. Like,
What is the crime? Aren't you a fucking free speech defender? What the hell is this? The crime is what? Protesting against Israel is not a crime, at least still to this day. I guess in 38 states it might as well be. 37 states it might as well be. But if you're a fucking free speech defender, what the hell are you saying here? This is a clear-cut violation of the First Amendment. New York Times headline about it. Oh, this was a famous New York Times story from Columbia hears plea for expelled student. Berg and two other speakers demand his reinstatement at gathering of 500. 3 members of the American Student Union, including Robert Burke, who was expelled in June for leading the anti-Nazi demonstrations last May, addressed a gathering of 500 students of the college and various schools at Columbia University in front of Hamilton Hall yesterday noon. It's so crazy that for so many people, they just openly say, like, no, you don't understand. Just like free speech means, like I say, slurs, and you can't say anything about it. You can't even like feel upset about it. Okay. But if you actually are peacefully demonstrating against a violent apartheid regime doing a genocide, then of course you're not going to have free speech. What do you mean? There's no freedom to protest against Israel. What are you talking about? Yeah, of course. You should go to jail. You should get deported. What do you mean? Free speech is just to say slurs without any additional free speech that comes after those slurs, by the way. I have free speech to say slurs. You don't even have the right to use your speech against that, okay? No, make no mistake. It just goes one direction. I cannot understand how you can look at this. This is like not even a real story, even though the real version of this has now happened, okay? But it's hilarious that Asmongold, who claims to be a free speech defender, is like, yeah, you should get deported based hurting Israel's feelings. Yeah.
We've got enough of these people on our own here that are living here already. You think we need more of them? We're going to need to import more of them from fucking...
There's no discussion on this either when the other side is doing the suffering Olympics driven by spite for their own countrymen, and it doesn't help that 80% of them are dumber than dog shit 60-year-olds who get Google Play cards scammed by Kevin Costner Facebooks.
China. So, yeah, it's insane. That's obstruction and harassment. Yeah, I guess so. What's the correct way to protest? Without breaking the law.
Yo, and if the law says you can't protest Israel, then, yep, that's it. It's even better when you consider a source, my subreddit. Is this from his subreddit? No, this is from World News Video or some shit. It doesn't fucking matter. It also doesn't matter because this was a fake story, but now there is a real story. There is a real story of a person who's having his green card revoked, potentially, for the crime of hurting Israel's feelings. I can only react to this image as I am, a Jew. To make Jewish words and phrases interchangeable with ICE detention is to make Judaism the face of fascism. This has happened in Israel and will happen here if we allow it, says David Grossman. It nauseates me on a basic level to see Judaism used as some sort of fascist taunt. The mixture of Jewish and Nazi signals from this administration is an intentional mixture to depoliticize Nazism and create a vision where only right-wing Judaism is seen as legitimate. Free Mahmoud and free Palestine. Daniel Greenfield. You are not a Jew. You are a human shield for those who terrorize and kill Jews. Real question. Are you concerned about them trying to arrest you? I don't give a fuck. I am a rich Twitch streamer, okay? I am the last person who matters in this process. We're talking about a real student activist who fucking put his body on the line and is now facing repercussions as a consequence of that. I think putting myself in this position is ridiculous, okay? I'm not saying it can't happen, but it's not something that I care about or entertain at this moment. And it's not something that will stop me from continuing to speak truth to power in this process. And it shouldn't stop you either, okay? We all have our rights, at least right now. We still have our rights. We still have a right to resist against this sort of thing. We still have the criminal justice system. And I hope that there are more reasonable people that are in positions of power right now that will put an end to this nonsense. Oh my fucking Lord. But it won't happen unless there is mass mobilization. Okay? Yeah. Meanwhile, at Harvard, former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, who headlined an event at Columbia right before Mahmoud Khalil was detained, just joked at a Harvard event that he would give exploding pages to students protesting his visit. Jaeger Larson, thank you for the 21 gifted subs. Former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett joked to hundreds of people about sending explosive devices to dissenting event attendees at a talk at the Harvard Business School on Thursday, according to 6 people present at the discussion. HBS professor Paul A. Gompers, 86, the moderator, began the off-the-record event by explaining Harvard's guidelines on disruption, noting that the dissenting audience members who interrupt the speaker would be removed. Bennett then interrupted to add, "I think we'll just give them a pager." Isn't that wonderful? If you are a former Israeli prime minister, you can joke about assassinating American college campus protesters against you. You can just joke about that sort of thing. It's perfectly fine. Mahmoud did everything that Columbia wanted and the students to do, always respectful and calm, was chosen to be the lead negotiator for this reason, and was always unmasked. It didn't help. Yeah. Here's the other aspect of this, that he didn't fucking violate any rules and actually abided by the rules as well. Okay? What really gets me is Mahmoud did everything that administrators claimed they wanted from us. He was always unmasked. He was extremely tactful with his words, was a legal permanent resident, was kind and patient even with those who dehumanized him, always stayed rational and calm. He was a lead negotiator precisely because of these qualities he had that I and so many of us lack. He always extended grace to those who didn't deserve it. He always helped us ground ourselves in the face of the constant trauma Columbia inflicted upon us all. Any journalist who interacted with him can speak to his character. It does not matter how perfectly we behave or how pure-hearted we clearly are. When fascism comes knocking at our doors, we will start with the most vulnerable and eventually get to eroding all of our rights. Open your eyes. I'm begging you to open your eyes. While many may have come knocking at Mahmoud Khalil's door yesterday, you will hear the knock at your own door tomorrow. And if you don't resist this now, nobody will be left to resist for you when it's too late. This is straightforwardly Nazi Germany shit, okay? There's no other way to put it. I don't know. I don't know what else to say, man. I really don't know what else to say. And you got fucking donkeys celebrating this decision. Like, it's so goddamn gross. It's wild to read about Nazi Germany and be shocked at the ways in which dehumanization it actively becomes the normative position in society, and the atrocities that unfold as a consequence of that. And then you read that shit and you go, oh, that could never happen again. I mean, come on, dude. That could certainly never happen again. That's insane. It's like, how did this happen? How do people become so complicit? You think to yourself, oh, well, back then they simply did not have access to information in real time. They didn't have the internet. They didn't know what was going on, even though many did, right? They smelled it. They saw it. It was visible in the backdrop of their everyday lives, and they looked the other way, either out of fear or because they didn't care. And yet, we're watching it unfold in real time, and we're watching it unfold in real time in broad daylight, and everyone can see it taking place. And it seems like, unlike previous civil rights movements, right, whether it be the civil rights struggle for black people, there is mass public support for this cause. And it's wild to me that the more there is support for this kind of thing, the more there is anger and resentment towards Israel's genocide, the more this administration tries to deal with it with political repression. Even Glenn Greenwald is supporting him. It's wild. Wait, no, that's not wild at all. That's like perfectly normal. Glenn Greenwald has been, has always been a free speech absolutist. This is like the one issue where he will unflinchingly shit on Israel over and over again. That's the one aspect where he hasn't lost his mind on. This is something that he's always been consistent on. regardless of who funds his operations. Matt Duss also talked about how Ann Coulter is outflanking the Anti-Defamation League, also known as the Apartheid Defense League, on this issue. There's almost no one I don't want to deport. Crime. Isn't this a violation of the First Amendment? There's almost no one I don't want to deport, but unless they've committed a crime, isn't this a violation of the First Amendment? Like, Ann Coulter's like, I haven't seen a deportation I don't like. Okay? I have yet to encounter a deportation I dislike until this very moment. It's insane. Like, this person is a direct villain. Okay? Here's new information, a scoop from Prem at Zeteo, where Mahmoud Khalil, a Palestinian who helped lead negotiations between Columbia University and student protesters, had appealed to the school for protections from harassment and possibly immigration and customs enforcement agents one day before the Trump administration detained him Saturday. Emails obtained by Zeteo show. Most recent among the leaked messages was an email Khalil, a green card holder, sent to Columbia interim president Katrina Armstrong on March 7th. Since yesterday, I've been subjected to a vicious, coordinated, and dehumanizing doxing campaign led by Columbia affiliates Shai Davide and David Lederer, who, among others, have labeled me a security threat and called for my deportation. This is correct, by the way. The most annoying dipshits are celebrating this. They actively champion this, and the Trump administration gave them this as a gift. A violation of numerous American principles and American laws, by the way. Shai Davide says, Dear Secretary Rubio, thank you for your strong statements. Now we want to see strong action. Illegally taking over a college in which you are not even enrolled and distributing terrorist propaganda should be a deportable offense, no? Because that's what Mahmoud Khalil from Columbia SJP did yesterday at Barnard College. This was from 4 days ago. And the DHS actually said, yeah, we'll do that. The Senate Judiciary Dems posted, free Mahmoud Khalil. And the White House responded with, this is the first arrest of many to come. The reason why they're saying that, by the way, once again, is because they hope to create a chilling effect on protests. If you're an American citizen, if you're an American Jew, okay, you should be on the fucking front lines. Straight up. There are overwhelming majorities of people that recognize what is going on. For the first time in American history, the majority of Democrats actually sympathize with the Palestinians over Israelis. That is a complete shift. Never thought would happen. Even if the Democratic Party does not listen to its base of support, it still does not change that reality that there are more people that absolutely recognize what the fuck is going on. And it's going to get worse. So it is our duty to protest against this, to resist against this in any way, shape, or form we can. Ramallah says so many people have no historical awareness and legitimately believe that it could not and would not happen again, but are unaware of the warning signs, so they just expect fascism to basically only show up when Trump himself says he's a fascist. I taught a few people about Beer Hall Push, and they were shocked that they had never learned about it, and immediately were like, wait, didn't Trump do the same thing, Lamau? Yes. The Action Network demand the immediate release of Palestinian student activist Mahmoud Khalil from DHS detention has already collected 1.5 million letters, by the way. There is broad support for this. There is broad popular support for this. Releasing a Palestinian student activist, a Palestinian American student activist, is infinitely more popular than Donald fucking Trump. Okay? And arresting pro-Palestinian and anti-Zionist student activists is only going to make the Trump administration even more unpopular. FYI, Action Network is just a tool. This is from Deportation Defense. Yes. This is a letter campaign created by Deportation Defense. We'll post a link as well so you can also sign up and make these same demands as well. Yeah, this was the email that he sent to Columbia 3 days ago before he got before his deportation process started by ICE. Citing the Beitar Post, Beitar is a right-wing Israeli harassment operation, not dissimilar to Canary Mission and many other Israeli Knesset grant-funded organizations that simply dox fucking American students on American college campuses without any sort of political or legal repercussions, by the way, and have greatly escalated post October 7. If you remember, some of the first things that Canary Mission and all these other like groups did was bring to college campuses these massive fucking billboards on the back of trucks doxing college students for the crime of criticizing Israel. Beitar is one of the most right-wing versions of this, led by a guy who is a revenge pornographer, allegedly. And they were, of course, going after Khalil. Khalil asked Armstrong in his email, citing the Beitar post, with the stakes being so high, I ask you, as representatives of Columbia University's administration, how will you protect international students from doxing and from deportation? How will you protect these students' rights to free speech, expression, and association, rights provided for in the U.S. Constitution and Columbia's Code of Conduct, and stop the suppression and now potential criminalization of that speech and expression? Students' futures, their livelihoods, and now, without exaggerating, their lives are at risk. Yeah, Beitar is so right-wing that they fucking fought with Shai Davide in the past. Here's what Letitia James said. I'm extremely concerned about the arrest and detention of Mahmoud Khalil, an advocate and legal permanent resident of Palestinian descent. My office is monitoring the situation and we're in contact with his attorney. Here's what the Columbia Office of the President just released, by the way. This was their reaction to everything that's going on. And yes, the law that the plan to deport pro-Hamas students relies on a 1952 law that targeted Jews. We'll talk about that as well, the irony inherent in this process. I write to you at a challenging moment for our community. Columbia University exists to serve the United States and the world by teaching, creating, and advancing knowledge. We pursue that mission through freedom of expression, blah, 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 blah. We will work tirelessly to fulfill our mission. We're taking a methodical and thoughtful approach to addressing the multitude of challenges ahead of us. Suck my fucking dick. We will support our community. I understand the distress that many of you are feeling about agents in the streets around campus. I feel it too, and I'm working with our team to manage the response. Resources for students are listed below. We will follow the law, as has always been the case, and rumors suggesting that any member of Columbia leadership requested the presence of U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents on or near the campus are false. It remains the longstanding practice of the university and the practice of cities and institutions throughout the country that law enforcement must have a judicial warrant to enter a non-public university areas, including residential university buildings. How'd they get there? We are deeply committed to free speech as a fundamental value, except for when you protest against Israel, in which case we have no commitment whatsoever to free speech, and we will let you get deported. I mean, this is all bullshit, okay? And then they have counseling and well-being resources. Do they have, other than counseling and religious life advisors or whatever, do they actually give you like an ACLU link in here on what to do when ICE comes knocking down your door? I don't see it. Maybe they did. Maybe they did. I don't see it, though. Beitar are the same ones who've been putting pages in people's pockets of pro-Palestinian activists, including Norm Finkelstein. The group cannot be any grosser than they are. That's who Columbia is working alongside ICE with. Yeah. Unsurprising that Fetterman is involved. We are strongly supportive of, said Glick, we are strongly supportive of Trump's administration's plan to deport jihadis who seek out to destroy America. Our campuses and our streets are filled with violent people who hate Jews and cannot coexist with Western society. On Wednesday, Glick was on Capitol Hill meeting with lawmakers, including pro-Israel Senator John Fetterman, Democrat from PA. A Zionist organization is compiling names of foreign students on student visas in the U.S. who spewed anti-Israel bile at campus protests and is hoping President-elect Trump will give the haters a one-way ticket back home. This is from the New York Post, by the way. That's why they're writing the article in this, in the English language, even though it is very close to how you would hear it from the original German, for the record. If you cannot comprehend how, if you cannot see what is going on, if you cannot recognize the writing on the wall and how we are actively becoming more and more militant, more and more right-wing, more and more dangerous, okay? More open to fascism. I don't know what to tell you. This is a telltale sign. I'm going to give you two examples here, by the way, two things that happened. One good news and one reason as to why why Khalil would have been placed in custody in a detention center in Jena, the LaSalle Detention Center facility in Louisiana. Pablo Manrique from Migrant Insider reports, ICE often goes immigration judge shopping by putting detainees in detention centers under jurisdictions of courts that very rarely decide in favor of migrants. Jena, LaSalle in Louisiana, where Mahmoud Khalil is held, is one such detention center. That is the reason why they sent him to LaSalle. And even then, it seems that a judge has blocked the Colombia pro-Palestinian protester organizer Mahmoud Khalil's removal from U.S. This is from the senior legal affairs reporter at Politico, Josh Gerstein. Apparently, a judge has blocked the pro-Palestinian protest organizer Mahmoud Khalil's removal from the U.S. pending further action on because it would be a violation of due process. But the very fact that, look, the very fact that this is happening, and before people get at me over this and be like, oh, well, what about the Democrats or whatever? This action is not being taken as it stands currently to start deporting people en masse, okay? This action is being taken specifically to have a chilling effect, to tell people you will get punished criminally. And it is an extension of the previous administration's policy on the matter. 3,500 college students were arrested under the Biden administration for protesting against the state of Israel. 3,500 students were arrested in direct violation of the First Amendment. 3,500. If a liberal administration is going to allow that to happen, what the fuck did you think a Republican administration was going to do? And the reason for why those people got arrested was not because they were being truly disruptive or anything like that. The reason why, the 3 times the number of people that were arrested after January 6th, by the way, 3 times the number. January 6th, 1,000 people are arrested and convicted, okay, of crimes during the insurrection. 3,500 student protesters arrested under the Biden administration. And the reason for why they did that was specifically to say, you cannot protest against the state of Israel. If you do, we will find a way to fuck your lives up. They released them. They released the overwhelming majority of those, if not almost all of those protesters, but they arrested them regardless. And the reason for why they did that was specifically to create an environment where people understood that if you protest against Israel, there will be violent repercussions for you. Okay? Administrations in the past have never done so against Nazis, actual neo-Nazis, protesting on college campuses, protesting all around the country. The Trump administration prior actively defended neo-Nazis, as a matter of fact. So there were very fine people on both sides during Charlottesville, where a neo-Nazi traveled all the way from Ohio to Charlottesville and killed a counter-protester, an anti-fascist, by the name of Heather Heyer. Joe Biden claimed that Heather Heyer's murder in the hands of a white supremacist terrorist was the reason why he ran for office again. Make no mistake. And then Joe Biden oversaw some of the most brutal tactics implemented against peaceful demonstrators against the state of Israel post-October 7. In a matter of a year, in his last year in office, Joe Biden oversaw the arrest of 3,500 student protesters for the crime in air quotes, of protesting against the apartheid regime of Israel, actively conducting a genocide with our weapons, with our taxpayer-funded machines, and with our political cover in broad daylight, in front of all of your eyes. They even went so far as to ban TikTok, or at least attempt to ban TikTok, because TikTok was showing the truth to younger generations about the depravity and the horrifying nature of Israel's offensive genocidal campaign in the Gaza Strip. At no step did we ever take a deep breath and say, hey, we should probably reconsider our relationship. I didn't say we're on the verge of fascism. I'm saying fascism is here. And people will say, Hassan, fascism has always been here, but it is in your face, directly here. I'm worried about you, man. Do you think you're safe as a pro-Palestinian content creator? Man, this is inappropriate. Stop asking me this question, okay? It's inappropriate. I don't care. I don't know what else to say other than the fact that Mahmoud Khalil, regardless of the smears, the vicious smears, was not arrested for any real reason other than the fact that this administration did not like what he had to say about a foreign nation. That's it. He didn't violate any laws. He didn't even break any fucking rules. It is actually the current administration that's violating pre-existing rules and laws in an effort to deport him. Like, look at the Canary mission, dude. First of all, the Canary mission should be disbanded. Like, the fact that it exists is insane to me. But this is exactly what they've been doing. And they were doing this before the Trump administration, and they've greatly escalated these doxing campaigns after the Trump administration, knowing full well that Trump will play ball with them and maybe offer them a bone and deport a couple of these scary foreign students. What is this? Jewish, if not now, org founder Simone Zimmerman shares some platforms nods alongside anti-Semitic podcaster Hassan Piker, who complains people are hyper-focused on October 7th, labeling Hamas a terror org instead of the legitimate resistance and spreading misinformation like mass rapes. Yeah, you can suck my dick. Yeah, look at the scary things that they were doing. Like, you have to be a schizo to watch this compilation. If this is the best you got for why this person should be deported, you are operating on so many different levels of mania. If this is personally like enough for you to say, oh, this is so scary, you are a psychopath. It's wild to me that there is something that happens when you like defend Israel and you become a Zionist, or you were always one, I don't know, but like you just have no way of understanding other human beings. You're just one note where you can like actively dox people, you can actively go after them, you can actively demand that the administration deport you, okay, for the crime of someone exercising their First Amendment rights against Israel doing a genocide. Like, how terrifying. You know what's fucking terrifying? Gestapo agents knocking down your door and taking you away in the middle of the night, not telling your 8-month pregnant wife where you are, and then entertaining the notion of revoking your green card status. That is actually terrifying. Not, ooh, these guys are banging drums and protesting against an apartheid state, a fucking foreign nation. That's not terrifying. That is expected. That is the right thing to happen way more frequently. It should be happening every fucking day. It is insane. Like, what the hell are we doing, man? What is happening? Like, the fact that people even entertain this is psychotic. Dog, I support Palestine, but every country has the right to say who and who cannot be in the country. This is called a democracy, and you may not like it, but it's a fact of life. Every country that does things like this, yes, you fucking moron. You know who else did things like this? Nazi Germany. The fuck are you saying? Oh, you don't understand. Every country has the right to say who and who can't be in the country. You know? Yeah, they did do that, okay? They did that to the fucking Jews in Nazi Germany. The fuck are you saying? Was that appropriate? Do you think that was all right? I'm sure there were plenty of fucking German dumbasses like you, okay? Living in Bavaria going, oh, well, you know, every country has a right to see who has the right to be there. Nice false equivalent. Why is that a false equivalence? Do you have a fucking brain cell that you can rub against another? It's not a false equivalence, you fucking moron. It is a one-to-one analog. Address what I said instead of going, nice false equivalence. When in doubt, pull the Nazi card. Oh my God, you have nothing. You fucking brainlet. You goddamn baboon. Holy shit. Address the argument and explain to me why the exact logical framework that you're operating off of is not a one-to-one application to Nazi Germany. You have nothing. You just resorted to insults? No, I didn't. I resorted to insults when you said nice false equivalence. I gave you a counterexample because I wanted to dignify you with a response, and you had no response. You just said nice false equivalence. Answer my comparison. Address the counter argument that I presented to you. Okay? If you have, it's not a false equivalence, explain why it's a false equivalence then. Explain why it's a false equivalence. You can't just say something is a false equivalence. You have to make an argument. Why are debate pedophiles so bad at debating? Why are debate perverts so fucking bad at debating? Debate pervertry cannot just be, oh, that's an ad hominem and move on. You can't just go, that's a false equivalence and move on. You have to describe why it is a false equivalence. You can't just say it is a false equivalence. Please entertain all of us with your counter. Tell me why it is a false equivalence without going, it's a false equivalence. It's a false equivalence because it's a false equivalence. Okay, that's a tautology. Explain why it is a false equivalence. You can't because you're a moron. You're going back to your fucking Sex Pestiny chat to try to get some counter narratives here, some counter examples. Quick, guys, give me some examples, please. What is the argument? You literally are seething. Holy shit. America's a democracy. But I'm seething. So you have no argument. You have no counterexample as to why it is a false equivalence. All you have is just saying it's false equivalence. That's it? You have no counterexamples? You have no reason to claim it's a false equivalence? Now you've just moved the goalpost to you're seething. Lol. People voted for these people to be removed, so they should be removed. It's that simple. That's not how this works, buddy. Okay? I told you that in Nazi Germany, people made the exact same argument. Well, you know, it is what it is. These people actively get to choose who stays in this country and who doesn't. It's also additionally funny to say this because it is deeply unpopular to remove the citizenship status of an American green card holder because they criticize the state of Israel, especially at a time when these have greatly and dramatically shifted in the favor of Palestinians. I highly doubt that this will be seen as a popular sentiment, but that's not the point right now. You're wrong on that front as well, but you don't even know what you're arguing, Lamau, word salad as. Zero people think you're making a brilliant point here. You are actively running away like the fucking coward that you are from the immediate retort you had. I dignified you with a response, and I said, why do you think it's a false equivalence? You could not entertain that even for a brief moment, and now you're just trying to pull the ripcord desperately because your brain is stunted, okay? You are both emotionally and intellectually stunted. That's it. Give me a fucking counter example. Tell me why it's a false equivalence. You can't, because it's not a false equivalence. This is projection, by the way. You don't even know what you're arguing for, Lamau. Word salad. Nazi Germany murdered millions of people. How can you possibly compare the two? Oh, dude. Was that what we were talking about? Is that why it's a false equivalence? Nazi Germany murdered millions of people. How can you possibly compare the two? I said that if you are a legal positivist, if you think, well, it's the law is the law, this is what people want. I told you, I gave you a historical example of when something that was truly heinous and truly considered to be an atrocity by today's standards was the law. It's legit. Now you're fucking trying to cry bully and go, it's legit an insult to the 6 million lives lost. Nobody in their right minds thinks modern America is similar to Nazi Germany. No, plenty of people do. It's just not after the final solution. This is before the final solution. But that's not the argument. That is not an adequate response. You are not actually presenting why this is a false equivalence. It's because you can't. But that's besides the point. That's why you had to resort to, it's insulting. That's not an argument. Saying something is insulting is not an argument, especially when you consider from your framework that was the law. In Germany, that was the law. You haven't brought a single argument, my guy. You just said Nazi. Okay, well, I think I'm done entertaining fucking this moron. I could literally restate the argument a million times over, and I think it would not penetrate the security barrier that you have up there. It's empty inside, but there's a fucking thick-ass skull. You will never be able to understand the normal human language. It's just not going to happen for you. I can confirm you gave arguments that just went right over his head. I know. Sometimes you just genuinely cannot argue with people who are too stupid to argue. This is one of those instances. It is what it is. And then that person will go back and be like, Hassan hates dissent. Hassan hates dissent. He banned me because he's too afraid of good arguments. No, we're banning you because not only are you fucking too stupid to communicate, okay, but you're also incredibly fucking narcissistic. A real case of Dunning-Kruger where you unironically bit off more than you can chew, and we're too stupid to understand even the fact that you bit off more than you could chew in this process. The railers will get the belt. Speaking of people you genuinely cannot reason with, what is this? Well, I don't even care about this. Speaking of people you genuinely cannot reason with, Sam Cedar did a Jubilee video, which we will be watching as well. Because apparently Sam also did the same thing that I just experienced right here, but in real time against people who actively had no shame and associated their faces and names with some of the stupidest things you've ever heard. Yes, also known as the Jube. Let's wrap this up and move on.
Khalil's arrest signifies an escalation in President Trump's vow to deport.
I have one critique for Hassan Abi. You have a tendency when simplifying your arguments to less informed audiences to make conclusionary statements. What? Okay.
Foreign students
You
and
didn't explain why this is a criticism.
imprison agitators involved in protests against Israel's war in Gaza. Last week, Columbia University also learned that the Trump administration pulled $400 million in grants and contracts, citing the school's failure to squelch anti-Semitism here on campus. It is unclear where Khalil is being held. His attorney has said he may have been transferred as far as the state of Louisiana. Reporting live from Morningside Heights, Christina Fan, CBS News, New York.
Okay, Christina, thank you.
A graduate student at Columbia University arrested by ICE officials for his role in the pro-Palestinian protests taking place on that campus last year.
Now, this comes as the Trump administration is threatening to revoke green cards and visas of those who support Hamas. Let's get right to Good Day's Briella Tomasetti. She is at the Ivy League school this morning with the latest. Briella, good morning.
Tashani and Dan, good morning. This arrest is the first publicly known deportation effort under President Trump's new plan to remove alleged Hamas sympathizers from college campuses.
Alleged Hamas sympathizers. Please, man, what are you guys doing? Like, please have bare minimum basic human decency. Please, I beg of you. Okay? Please, please. Under no circumstances do you have to adopt the framing that this insane right-wing government is deploying. Holy fuck, dude. Jesus Christ. Oh, my God. Alleged Hamas sympathizers.
Campuses. Trump has also canceled $400 million in federal grants to Columbia University, quote, due to the school's continued inaction in the face of persistent harassment of Jewish students. Federal immigration authorities arrested Columbia graduate student Mahmoud Khalil at his university-owned apartment over the weekend, doubling down on the Trump administration's promise to crack down on anti-Semitism. Khalil, a permanent U.S. resident with a green card, is a pro-Palestinian activist who played a major role in protests that swept Columbia University's campus last spring. A new executive order signed by President Trump calls for the deportation of resident aliens, including students with visas, who broke laws during anti-Israel protests following the October 7, 2023 terrorist attacks. Khalil's attorney, Amy Greer, told the Associated Press he was being detained at an immigration detention facility in Elizabeth, New Jersey. She says when his wife tried to visit yesterday, she learned he wasn't there. Khalil's whereabouts are currently unclear. While speaking over the phone with one of the ICE agents during the arrest, Greer was told the agency was acting on State Department orders to revoke Khalil's student visa and green card. In a post yesterday to X, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the Trump administration will be revoking the visas and/or green cards of Hamas supporters in America so they can be deported. The Department of Homeland Security added that Khalil forfeited his rights to remain in the U.S., alleging he, quote, led activities aligned to Hamas, a designated terrorist organization.
If he was promoting violence of any sort, then it would be somewhat reasonable.
Khalil Sr. on the right served as a...
Even then it wouldn't. He's a green card holder, okay? No. If he's promoting violence, if he is truly promoting violence, if he's like urging a riot in a real situation, okay? Let's say there's a Nazi and they're urging violence at a violent Nazi rally, which of course happens all the time, by the way, with no prosecution whatsoever because they say First Amendment, okay? But in that process, then you can't just apprehend them, lock them in jail, and then try to remove their citizenship status. You can't do that. That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. Even when there's due process, I still do not believe that you can just remove the citizenship status of someone, okay? You can work within the existing legal structure that is right there for American citizens, green card holders and natural-born U.S. citizens alike. I'm getting confused when you keep saying citizenship status. Are we talking about green cards or citizens? Green card holders are also citizens. Like, they are migrants documentation, okay? It is the closest you can get to, in terms of a status, it is the closest you can get to without being a natural-born U.S. citizen. Like, what are we talking about? They're a legal permanent resident.
The student negotiator during last spring's protests as they bargained with administrators over an end to the tent encampment set up on campus. Since then, he's faced sanctions at the university for helping to organize a march where activists.
You are de facto a citizen when you have a green card, okay? De facto, not legally. It's not legally the same. It's the one step. It is the one step before you have permanent citizenship. Not true, Hassan. Wait, what? Yes, it is true. It is. You are de facto seen as a. I'm not saying you are legally a citizen. I'm saying, listen to my words. You're basically a fucking citizen. Hassan, this motherfucker does not know what de facto means. I do know. Well, it seems like you're deliberately being obtuse then, even if you do understand. Can you explain de facto? It is hard to follow all this as a foreigner. It means, yes, de facto means in practice and functionally. You are in practice and functionally a citizen. You are one step removed. You are one step removed from being a full-blown citizen. On your day-to-day experience, you are basically a citizen. It is also known as a permanent resident card. There are lots of misunderstandings here that can be easily cleared up. Here's usimmigration.org. What is the difference between a green card and U.S. citizenship? Permanent residents have the right to work and live in the U.S. indefinitely, as well as the right to petition for close family members for a green card. However, because green card's relatives are considered preference relatives, this process takes considerably longer than for a U.S. citizen. Permanent residents continue to be citizens of another country, which means they do not have a right to a U.S. passport. Lawful permanent residents do not have the right to vote. Their status if the U.S. government considers they've abandoned their status by spending more than 6 months outside the United States, for example. If a lawful permanent resident plans on leaving the U.S. for a period exceeding 1 year, they must first obtain a permit if they do not wish to abandon their status. After a certain amount of time, permanent residents can apply for U.S. citizenship, also known as the naturalization process. These are the major distinctions between someone who is a naturalized U.S. citizen versus a green card holder. Now, if you may have noticed something. You may have noticed something significant here, which is that these are simply laws, okay? They're just things written on a piece of paper. And whoever chooses to enforce them get to dictate whether or not they are valid, permissible, and will be followed through on. And if you noticed, laws can be violated. Laws can be violated by individual actors, but they can also be violated by those in positions of power, for example. And when those in positions of power violate those laws or actively seek out actively try to change those pre-existing laws, as the Trump administration is trying to do right now, new laws will be implemented, which is why we always say there's a difference between something being legal and something being moral. There's a difference between something being good and something being legal. And you might have noticed that the Trump administration very clearly is trying to change the laws, or at least starting the process of changing the laws by actively undermining it. Unlike green card holders, U.S. citizens cannot be deported from the United States unless that is they committed fraud to obtain their green card or citizenship. Yes. Make sure chat knows that his detainment was indeed sudden and kept secret. Last night, his family and lawyers didn't know where he was taken and his wife was threatened. Yes. Mahmoud Khalil, a legal resident of U.S. and Columbia University student, has been illegally detained by the U.S. government and his whereabouts are unknown to even his wife and lawyers. They basically kidnapped him.
Activists glorified Hamas and for playing a substantial role in the circulation of social media posts criticizing Zionism. Columbia University shared a statement with Fox 5 saying, Columbia is committed to complying with all legal obligations and supporting our student body and campus community. We are also committed.
Dude, the local media coverage of this is insane, by the way. They're just basically saying it's awesome and it's good. And these guys love Hamas and they were doing material support for Hamas. And it's awesome that the Trump administration is deporting one of them.
To the legal rights of our students and urge all members of the community to be respectful of those rights. His attorney told us, we will vigorously be pursuing Mahmoud's rights in court and will continue our efforts to right this terrible and inexcusable and calculated wrong committed against him. And according to the Columbia Daily Spectator, starting today, gate access for university ID holders, registered guests, and alumni will be limited to just 3 entry points, including the one here behind me, in any future protests. But for now, we're live here in Morningside Heights. Dan and Tashani will send it back to you.
Briella, thank you.